was teaching 26 hours a week, doing a 40-hour work week, commuting for 2 hours a day on top of that, and I still managed to complete my PhD in just 3 years. Now, if that sounds appealing to you, I am going to tell you all of my tips and tricks and my techniques that helped me to do that. Pretty unheard of to do a part-time PhD in just 3 years, so I am very proud of that achievement. So here are my tips and tricks for how to do your PhD faster. Hi there, I am Dr. Hayley Stainton, and if you are new to this channel, please do subscribe, hit the like button on this video too. I have lots of content that I'm sure will interest you. I've got videos on how to do a PhD, I've got academia type videos, and I am doing a lot of stuff on study skills, universities, all those kinds of areas, so I'm sure there will be something to interest you. So I am actually really proud of my PhD journey. This is it. This is the bad boy. 3 years, baby, 3 years. Sometimes I look at it and I think, 3 years, what for? What for? It's a little bit dusty, actually. But then other times I think, absolutely, such an achievement. It was so worth it. And I'm really glad that I didn't waste 5, 8, 10 years. I've heard of people spending as much as 10 years on their research project. I'm glad I didn't take up so much time, and I'm glad I finished it when I did. And I think that a lot of people, when they are doing their PhD or thinking about doing their PhD, they want to know, actually, how can I do it as fast as possible? So in this video, I am going to give you my tips and tricks on how I did it pretty quickly, actually. Time management is an absolute key part of doing a dissertation, of doing a thesis, of doing a PhD. Any kind of independent research, time management is a pretty important part of it. And the better your time management is, the more effectively you can work and the quicker you can finish that PhD. Now, I do have a few tips for time management that I will share with you. So my first tip is that it's a really good idea to have a schedule and stick to it. So decide you are going to start work at 9 a.m, 10 a.m, whatever time works for you, and stick to that time. And it can also be a really good idea to plan into that schedule. So don't just write, I'm working, but actually give yourself something tangible to work on. So for me, I would use the calendar on my iPhone. And for each day, I would map out, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to work on that. I would like to mix it up a little bit because I get bored. And maybe on Monday and Tuesday, I will work on a part of my literature review, and on Wednesday I will do some reading on an area that I'm not too familiar with yet, and then on Thursday I will revisit that literature review, and on Friday I will have meetings with my supervisors. That's kind of how my schedule would look. Another key way that you can manage your time really well is to think about dwell time. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, dwell time is like your downtime. It's when you're not doing an awful lot. I'm not talking about using your relaxation time and your time off, because that's very important. I'm talking about when you're sat on the bus, or when you are at the doctor's waiting for your appointment, or any other time when you're just kind of not doing very much. The time when maybe you would scroll through your phone and look at Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or whatever. Dwell time can be a really handy time actually to do some reading up, to do some extra things. And I would often take a notebook with me and I would think about things and I would jot down notes, or I would use that time to watch YouTube videos like this one on how can I do my PhD faster, give me some tips and tricks. Or I would, listen to a podcast about research, or these kinds of things. And using that dwell time can actually be really, really effective, and it's a really good use of your time. And that's time that otherwise you probably wouldn't be doing an awful lot. Another tip for managing your time well is to make sure that you have adequate downtime. There is no point reaching burnout. You don't want to work yourself to the bone. That's not good mentally, it's not good physically. Don't do that. For me, I had a rule that at 5 p.m. I was allowed to pour a glass of wine. If I wanted to, if I had a reason that I had to do a bit more work, then so be it. But usually I would finish by 5 p.m. and I would not do any more work And for me, it was the time I switched off. And I think that's really, really important that you have that time, that separation. Another piece of advice is don't push yourself too hard. It can be really easy to get super frustrated when the words just aren't flowing. We all have days like this. Sometimes I would sit at the computer and I would start my research and I would find I've been sat there an hour and I've written maybe a dozen words. And then I would feel really cross at myself because I would look at my clock and think, an hour's gone by, what have I achieved? Basically nothing. Or sometimes I would write words, but I would think, these words are rubbish. I just want to delete them and write it all again. What a waste of time. And I would get really frustrated with myself. And actually, that's not a good place to be. So what I learned towards the end of my PhD journey was that it's okay. If I'm having one of those days, do something else. Stop writing. Go do some reading. Watch some YouTube videos. YouTube videos might not directly always help me, but they could be useful. Go to the library. Go to a seminar or something and watch somebody else present their research. It's nothing to do with mine. And actually, I often get a lot of tips from those. Don't push yourself too hard. If you're having a rough day, take a day off. There were many afternoons where I tried all morning. I just couldn't get there. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to watch a bit of Friends. Friends relaxes me. I'm spending the afternoon watching Friends. And I actually think that by taking that time off, I was more effective the following day than I would have been if I just pushed myself and made myself more and more frustrated, because that's not a good place to be. Another tip for managing your time well is don't waste time. If a chapter of a book doesn't look relevant to you, don't read it. Or skim read it. If you think there's an event that isn't going to suit you, isn't going to be helpful for your research, maybe don't go, or maybe dip in and out of the bits that you think will be useful. I was directed to so many books and readings and research programs and seminars and things, and sometimes they were super useful, but sometimes they weren't. I would feel frustrated because I would be sat there thinking, this is a waste of my time. I could be somewhere else, doing something else and making progress, and I'm not. So don't waste your time. If you're anything like me, you're just going to feel frustrated and it's not going to help you finish that PhD faster. And just one last note that I would like to make on the topic of managing your time and time management is there is a book that I read that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it was actually a game changer for me in terms of managing my own time. It's called The 4-Hour Workweek. I'll put the link down below in the description for you. Now, this book is written by Tim Ferriss, and he just gives you all these great tips and tricks on things to do and things not to do and time wasters, and he puts it in such a great way. Now, that is a book that's not a time waster. I definitely recommend that you have a read of that because you can learn so much from it that it pays off in the long run because you will save time because of what you learn in that book. So I do recommend that. I'll put the link down below. Another way to finish your PhD faster is to have a reason to finish it faster. There are so many people who take years and years to do their PhDs because what's the rush? These are often people who already have the job, so they are already maybe a university lecturer, for example, and they know that the university are okay with them taking their time to do the research, and they know that actually doing it quicker isn't going to have much impact on their life and on their career than if they did it slower. In my personal experience, I was super motivated to finish my PhD quickly. First of all, I really wanted that university lecturer job. Actually, a year into my PhD, my 3 years, I did get that job. But I continued to be super motivated because not long after I started at the university, I got married and we wanted to start a family. I was very aware that doing a PhD is a big commitment and it's a lot of work, and so is going to work, and so is a baby. So I didn't want all three of those things. So I decided as soon as I was at a point in my PhD where I thought I can finish this in a few months, less than 9 months, yeah, now is the time to try for a baby. That was really something that definitely motivated me. And I actually had my PhD viva just 2 weeks before the baby was delivered. So that was a pretty big achievement and I was very proud of that. Another thing that you can do to complete your PhD faster is to just immerse yourself into the experience. Now, I know that is a little bit contradictory to what I said before when I said that you need downtime, and you absolutely do. But at the same time, don't fight it. If there are things that you feel you should be involved in, you know, seminars you could go to, colloquiums you should attend, webinars, those sorts of things, just do it. A PhD isn't going to last forever, and it might be all-consuming and all-encompassing while you're doing it, but ultimately, by throwing yourself in there, by getting involved, by being totally immersed, you might actually just finish that PhD that little bit faster. And my last suggestion on what you can do to complete your PhD faster is to think strategically. Have strategy to what you're doing. Think about the long-term plan. Think about the medium term and the short term. What are you doing and when, and why are you doing it that way? And I do have a few helpful tips on things that you can do to help you to be strategic in your work and in your planning. Now, one of the things that you can do is to keep an annotated bibliography. From the outset, you might think, I don't want to create extra work for myself, and I get that, totally get that. But what I found was that by keeping my annotated bibliography, it actually, in the long run, created less work. So I read, as anybody will do, as part of a PhD, lots and lots of papers, books, chapters, etc. And some of these were relevant to the subject area, and some were relevant to the methodology. Now, I kept a detailed description of what I've read, what the reference is, and what the main outcomes or findings or the points of interest for my particular research were within that. And I found that helped me not only to retain the information a bit better, but also I could flick back to it at any point, and then I could very quickly get references, remember which points I'd read where quite quickly, and I found that that was a super useful tool, and that's something that I would recommend anybody to do as part of their PhD process. Another thing that you can do is to have a think about your overall thesis. If you are doing a PhD that involves a thesis, how are you going to structure it? What are the chapters that need to be in there, and what are they going to be about? And whilst you might not have the exact answer at the beginning, and my thesis changed so much from how I had initially planned it would be, by having that plan, you have something to work towards. You have that structure. You're able to break it up into smaller chunks and bite-sized pieces, which can help with motivation, which can help with staying on track. It can also help to mix things up a bit, because if you get really fed up of one area, move on to another. So by having that plan of what chapters will there be, what will they involve, etc. quite early on, that can be really helpful in helping you to be able to complete your PhD faster. Use technology to your advantage. There is some great technology out there these days, from transcription software to apps on your iPhone for managing time, to referencing software, to all sorts of things. So have a look at what is available to you and what will help you save time. If there's something that will help you save time, do it. Definitely do it. Another thing you can look into as well is hiring help for things. Obviously, your research is your research and it needs to be done by you. But there are some things like interview transcriptions, for example, that it might be easier if you get somebody else to do it. So if you have got a budget there, you can outsource things like that. There are some really great websites. So Fiverr, for example, Upwork is another one. You can hire freelancers on there and they can help you, and often they charge pretty reasonable rates. So that's another thing that you can consider to help you to complete that PhD that bit faster. Invest your time wisely. As I touched on before, you will be going to conferences, webinars, colloquiums, all these sorts of things, and there are a lot. There are a lot of them out there. So just make sure that you choose wisely. Read up on these events and decide which ones are the best use of your time and why. A lot of these things are online these days, so you can also decide, actually, is it a virtual event, which eliminates travel time? Or would I be much better off attending in person because the networking opportunities, etc., can be really great with that? And have a think about what's the best use of my time, basically. And don't go to everything, but go to enough that you are sufficiently trained and you gain knowledge and it is beneficial for you. Okay, so believe me when I tell you, you can do that PhD faster. I did mine part-time in 3 years. I was pregnant tired. I mean, I had a pretty good pregnancy, but most people are tired when they're pregnant. I worked a full-time job at the same time and I completed my PhD. That's a pretty big achievement for me. I'm pretty proud of myself, but you can do it too. You can do that PhD faster. You just need to find the ways to motivate yourself, to structure your time, and to get it done. So if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, leave me a comment, tell me how far along you are with your research, what challenges are you facing? I always love to hear from you. And also take a look at some of my other videos, which I'm sure you will find very interesting and helpful as well.